Neuro-Linguistic Programming was once hailed as the greatest discovery in psychology and personal development in our lifetime. These days, though, some consider it to be a pseudoscience. Others believe it's only used by narcissists to manipulate people. To put it mildly, NLP has earned quite the reputation in the 5 decades that it's existed. The truth about NLP is complicated, but I'm here to untangle it for you. Navigating the chaotic waters of this controversial modality is difficult. It's frustrating even for master practitioners. This is why most people fail to get the benefits of NLP that they've heard so much about. Who should you learn it from? What is real NLP? Is it a science? Does it actually work, or does it fail to live up to the hype? Do NLP certifications even matter? This video will answer these questions. It will also deliver some surprising truths you don't expect. Most importantly, by the end of this video, you will have a clearer understanding of NLP, an understanding that will save you thousands of dollars and years wasted on ineffective trainings. To understand NLP, you need to understand a bit about its history. Let's dive into the mysterious origins of neuro-linguistic programming. In the early 1970s, the human potential movement hit a peak. Personal development became a household topic in America. An explosion of self-help books hit the shelves of bookstores. Self-improvement seminars were suddenly in high demand. More and more people bought into the belief that they could take control of their destinies. During this time, the University of California, Santa Cruz provided fertile ground for these new ideas. A young musician named Richard Bandler enrolled in the university in the early 1970s. He had the uncanny ability to conduct effective psychological interventions. What's uncanny about that, you might ask? He had no formal training in therapy, and he wasn't a psychologist. What he did have, though, was an equally uncanny ability to model the success of other people. As a part-time job, he spent many hours transcribing videos for a publishing company. Most of the videos were of therapists working with clients. One eccentric therapist, in particular, seemed to get amazing results. The therapist was Fritz Perls, the creator of Gestalt therapy. Bandler intuitively picked up on what Perls was doing in the videos and began imitating him. He got so good at this that he could create successful interventions with clients just like Perls. John Grinder was a linguistic professor at the same university. He had no interest in psychology, but Bandler's ability to model Perls really impressed him. He agreed to code the patterns of Bandler's behaviors. Grinder would explain how Bandler was doing it, create a model for it, and then test the model by teaching it to others. He wanted to see if they could get the same results. This was the birth of neuro-linguistic programming. It wouldn't get that name, though, for about 5 more years. For the time being, they called it Meta. Bandler and Grinder went on to model 2 more outlier therapists. The therapists were Virginia Satir and Milton Erickson. Satir was a renowned family therapist. Erickson was a hypnotist who would become known as the father of modern hypnosis. At this point, Meta seemed to take on a life of its own. Bandler and Grinder demonstrated their rare abilities to audiences on campus. As they did this, the more word spread that they could cure psychological issues in a matter of minutes. Volunteers, students from UCSC, joined them. They helped to develop the technology further and faster. Despite the university setting, though, NLP was anything but academic. Bandler, Grinder, and the Meta Gang, as they called themselves, focused on experience. They engaged in several experiments to better understand the structure of experience. They wanted to model how we experience in order to change it. Theorizing and philosophizing about it was a waste of time to them. They found that the best way for people to change was to change the structure of their subjectivity. This turned out to be a lot faster than trying to change the content. For example, to cure people of phobias, they first figured out how to give a person a phobia. Once they understood these thought patterns, they could reverse engineer the phobia. This meant that they could make it go away in minutes. A content-based intervention would be something like systematic desensitization. This is when a person with a phobia is slowly introduced to the thing causing the phobia. They're exposed to it until they become comfortable with it. This is an example of changing someone's experience through focusing on content. But this could take up to 12 one-hour-long sessions. The NLP fast phobia process, on the other hand, usually takes only one 15-minute session. As the technology grew, so did the popularity of NLP. Therapists and psychologists from all over the world came to Santa Cruz. They wanted to learn this innovative technology from Bandler and Grinder. Books detailing the model further solidified NLP's status as a new direction for psychology. By the late 70s or early 80s, depending on who you ask, Bandler and Grinder went their separate ways. Bandler's life would soon take a dark turn. In 1986, while still living in Santa Cruz, authorities arrested him for murder. In 1988, he was acquitted, but the damage to his reputation and to NLP was just beginning. No one knows the truth of what happened the night of the murder, except for Bandler. He is the only person still alive who was there when it happened. I'll give my thoughts on whether he was guilty later in the video. At this time, many people no longer wanted to associate themselves with NLP. Its popularity took a sharp dive, but one man would rescue the reputation of NLP. In the early 90s, NLP's popularity would resurge. This was due to its best salesman ever, Anthony Robbins, and his infomercials. This time, its high regard was no longer in the field of psychology, though. Self-improvement was now a major industry. People flocked to the charismatic firewalker to learn NLP, which he credited for his success. In the late 1990s, Richard Bandler tried to regain control over the rights of NLP. He sued many prominent NLP teachers, including his former founding partner, John Grinder. Not even Tony Robbins was safe. Bandler hit him with a lawsuit as well. He sued anyone he thought was using his ideas without a proper license. This would create another dark period for NLP. Practitioners of NLP feared that Bandler would sue them as well. Many early developers stopped calling what they did NLP as a result. Also, people questioned how effective NLP was if the two who created it couldn't even get along. Their legal battles would stretch on for years. Once again, the reputation of Neuro-Linguistic Programming fell. To this day, the majority of what Tony Robbins does is NLP, but he also stopped calling it that. Robbins' popularity would continue to grow as NLPs dwindled. By the year 2000, all the lawsuits had settled and the dust cleared. NLP still existed, but the courts decided it belonged to no one. At first, this might have seemed like a good thing, but with no central regulator, anyone could claim to be a NLP practitioner or trainer. If any definitive and legal designation of what NLP is and isn't ever existed, it was now dissolved. This would lead to the mess we find NLP to be today. Before I was aware of all that I just described, I enrolled in my first NLP training in 2012. Two renowned NLP teachers taught the course. They had also been early developers in the mid-1970s. By the end of the 2-week training, I had my practitioner certificate, but there was one thing I was certain about. I did not know NLP. Over the course of the training, I attended lectures, I watched demonstrations, and we were also given short periods of time to practice, unsupervised. By the end of the 2.5-week training, I could say I had a NLP experience. I had been exposed to NLP, but I was far from a NLP practitioner. The piece of paper in my hand certifying me as an NLP practitioner meant nothing. The real practice was about to begin. From that point on, I practiced NLP every day. I went through my manual 3 times from cover to cover. I practiced every technique and process on myself and with anyone who would let me practice on them. I enrolled in a practitioner program with another institute. To get a different perspective, I wanted to train with other teachers. I also took their hypnosis course so I could understand the link between hypnosis and NLP. The puzzle of what NLP is was coming together for me, but I was still far from understanding how it actually works. After a year of NLP immersion, you might be wondering if it was working. I wouldn't have spent the money and the time training if it wasn't. My life was changing dramatically, and sometimes faster than I could keep up. I could drive the car, so to speak, but I didn't know how the engine worked. I was determined to find out. By the time I got to the master practitioner training, I had a lot of questions. Something didn't seem right about NLP trainings. Most of the people who had attended with me the year before kept coming up to me. They asked why was I better at NLP than they were. They had achieved the same certification as me. Why didn't they have the same skills? At first, I didn't know. I was stumped. Finally, I asked them if they had practiced at all in the past year. The answer was the same for everyone. They had not practiced since they had received their certification a year ago. Why practice when you're already a certified practitioner? This confirmed my concerns about NLP trainings. Certifications create a false sense of having NLP knowledge, skills, and abilities. A certification cannot give you something that takes practice over time to get. Unless certifications require testing your skills and knowledge, they're meaningless. It's just a prop to sell you a false sense of having something you don't. In other words, they only help NLP businesses make money. After asking teachers, especially the ones who had been there since the early days, how NLP was originally taught, I started to get some answers. When Grinder and Bandler were still teaching together in the 1970s, NLP trainings lasted 30 days. The majority of the training consisted of supervised practice with feedback. This was before the technology had grown to the size it is today, 5 decades later. Today, NLP practitioner trainings are sometimes as short as 7 days or even 3 days. So as the technology has grown, the trainings have shrunk. How can this be? Something's got to give, and it has. Needless to say, NLP trainings today aren't what they used to be. Few people have the time to take 30 days off for a self-improvement training, and few people could afford how expensive these trainings would have to be. There's too many logistical costs. For a business, it wouldn't make enough profit. Add to it that most people taking NLP trainings care less about learning NLP than getting a certificate. When you put it all together, why pay thousands for a long training? You can pay much less for a 3-day training and still get a certificate that says you're an NLP practitioner, since there is no clear definition of what it means to be an NLP practitioner. And there is no oversight to regulate the quality of NLP trainings. NLP practitioner certificates on paper all look the same. Print one off your home computer. No one will know the difference. This is why the quality of most NLP trainings these days is so poor. Many NLP teachers today don't even understand what they're teaching. After getting their 3-day practitioner certificate, they get a 3-day master practitioner certificate. They pay a few $100s more to get their NLP trainer certificate and then start teaching. Few institutes ever test their students, and even if they do, they don't fail them even if they get everything wrong. But if you've paid your tuition, you're certified to teach others what you don't know. What's also unfortunate is that some of the early developers have moved away from what real NLP actually is. They've created their own models, which are more content-based, but they're still calling it NLP. To summarize, few of the original NLP trainers are still teaching real NLP. Most of the newer generation of NLP trainers don't even know the difference. They've never received proper training, nor have they put in the practice it takes to be effective. And most of them don't care. They're more focused on running a business selling NLP certificates. Teaching real NLP is not their goal. So what is one to do if you want to learn real NLP and become a true NLP practitioner? It would take me more than a year of practicing NLP daily before I felt like I could legitimately call myself an NLP practitioner. This also included attending a second practitioner training and a hypnosis training. Later, I would attend master practitioner trainings as well as trainer training, and I resource coach for other teachers so I could retake all of the trainings. 8 years ago, I started this YouTube channel because I saw an opportunity. I saw NLP students in advanced NLP trainings who didn't even know basic NLP concepts. They lacked basic skills as well. I thought I could start a business teaching people what they should have already learned. Perhaps we could spend the time getting in the practice it takes to build real skill and knowledge. It didn't work. People still paid thousands of dollars to their teachers for an NLP certificate. Then they watched my free videos on YouTube to learn what their teachers were failing to teach them. More on this later. Before starting my YouTube channel, I was fortunate to meet NLP legend Steve Andreas. By this time, he had retired, and he offered to mentor me. It was perfect timing because I still had a lot to learn. I was running out of NLP trainings to attend, and I didn't know where to go next. Being mentored by Steve was one of the greatest blessings of my life. In the beginning, he helped me unlearn the incorrect teachings I had received. As our mentorship progressed, he taught me what NLP actually is. To this day, I have not encountered anyone who has understood NLP better than Steve and his wife, Connie Ray. I know what a bold statement that is. I'm sure many people are wondering how could they know NLP better than the founders. No doubt, Bandler and Grinder are brilliant. What they created is rare and unique. Almost no other duo in the world could have done it. No one had until they came along. Yet the source of brilliance doesn't always understand their own brilliance. Sometimes an outside perspective can capture something that the source cannot. Steve and Connie Ray wrote the first readable books of NLP. The NLP books that came before theirs read like engineering manuals. Not great for learning, but great if you need something to put you to sleep. Steve took me to a new level of understanding NLP. I became more effective with it than ever before. I was also reaching the peak of my frustration to make NLP a career. Succeeding as an NLP teacher without compromising my values and integrity seemed impossible. NLP was, and still is, my passion. I wanted more than anything to make it a career, but I quit. I quit teaching and I quit YouTube. I was ready to move on to a more sustainable career, but there was one thing left that I wanted to do before I walked away. My goal was to create the most complete NLP practitioner training. This meant teaching an in-person 24-day training, and I wanted to source the best NLP practitioner material for it. So I asked Steve and Connie Ray Andreas for permission to use their material. I had learned from many trainers and took multiple practitioner courses, but no teacher captured the perfect balance of Bandler and Grinder's styles. No teacher I had learned from had captured an ultimate version of NLP like Steve and Connie Ray had. When I announced this in-person training, barely enough people signed up to make it worth it. When I announced that I would create an online version, the response was overwhelming. It enabled me to continue to do what I do now, teaching and creating content. Before I go on, I want to mention that this training is still available. I want everyone to have access to a pure NLP source, so I'm making it available at a low cost anyone can afford. You'll find more information about it in the description below this video. Let's finish clearing up the mess before this video gets too long. Does NLP actually work? I'm sure you already know what I'm going to say. I grew up surrounded by personal development. My dad used to buy many products from Earl Nightingale. They included early self-improvement legends like Zig Ziglar and Jim Rohn. I actually met Jim Rohn when I was 16 years old because my dad took me to one of his talks. I also listened to the cassette tapes from Tony Robbins' first program, Personal Power, when it first came out. Later, I would study philosophy, Zen Buddhism, Stoicism, and non-duality. I would also undergo various psychological therapies with licensed therapists. I can say with absolute certainty, NLP has been the most effective of everything I've tried and studied. What's missing from everything else is the real-life applications NLP provides. Is it a science? No, it's not. The creators of NLP have never called it a science. They've never tried to pass it off as a science either. This is why I say it can't be a pseudoscience. A pseudoscience is something that is trying to be passed off as a science when it's not. No one who understands NLP confuses it with a science. So what is it? Ross Jeffries recently interviewed Richard Bandler. In that interview, Bandler clearly stated that NLP is not a science. It's a model. It's a model for making models. Math, for example, is not a science. It is the language of science. No one would argue whether math is a pseudoscience. Science itself is not a science. Science is an approach to discovering what is objectively true. NLP is the study of subjectivity. When people try to discredit NLP, they often say that because it's not a real science, it cannot work. Does the English language work? It's not a science, but we've used it to communicate since before modern science existed. So it is effective, yet it's not a science. Language is a model of reality, which is why linguistics is a part of NLP. NLP is a model for change and transformation. It's based on understanding how we structure our subjectivity. You cannot experience the world outside of your subjectivity. It determines how you feel, think, behave, and live. Understanding how we create our experiences is vital. It is the most important thing we could understand if we want to create a fulfilling life. Who should you learn NLP from? I'll answer that in a moment, but first, I'll answer an easier question I often get. People ask it when they're interested in enrolling in my NLP practitioner training. Will I get a certificate? The answer is no. I do not certify anyone for anything unless I test you and can verify your knowledge and skills. As I already said, most certifications are meaningless. No one oversees how they're given out. Most NLP institutes will give you a certificate just for showing up to the training. Some don't even require that. At the end of a training with Richard Bandler, I picked up my certificate on a table next to everyone else's. No one checked to see if I had showed up for even a single day of the training. Your only true certification is your knowledge and skills. If you're focused on acquiring NLP certificates, you're focused on the wrong thing. All certifications do is give you a false sense of knowing something you don't actually know. They do not give you credibility. I have never been asked by any of my clients or teachers to show them my certificates. So who should you learn NLP from? Of course, I'm going to say you should learn from me, but I won't tell you to learn only from me. There are still great NLP teachers out there, and there are great books out there as well. Bandler has written some amazing books in the last 30 years. Steve and Connie Ray Andreas' books are outstanding, probably the best. The online NLP practitioner training I offer is solid. It has all you need to know to be an NLP practitioner. It isn't diluted with any other influences like law of attraction or false NLP models. Many NLP teachers mix in non-NLP material into their trainings these days, but you want a firm understanding of what NLP is and what it is not to be effective with it. And if you truly want to master NLP, the key to it is what John Grinder once said in an interview. Master NLP on yourself as well as others. If you only do one or the other, you're missing out on becoming a true master. A true NLP master can use NLP effectively on themselves as well as others. But what if I'm a coach and I only want to use NLP on my clients, you might ask? You will never become the coach you could be if you don't practice NLP on yourself. Finally, what do I think? Did Richard Bandler commit murder in 1986? I talked to people who knew Bandler then and who know him now. Some say they think he did it, and some say they think he did not. If I had to bet money based on their opinions and on the life that Bandler has led since, what would I bet? I would bet that he did not murder that woman back in 1986. And if he did, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't learn from his brilliance. If you want to truly master NLP, my trainings as well as my videos will steer you in the right direction. Fortunately, I found a way to stay true to NLP as well as my values to make a career out of this. I've made more than 1,000 videos here on YouTube, which you can obviously access for free. You could also access my practitioner training for the same price it would cost you to buy a few NLP books. You also get access to a community of practitioners for you to practice with when you enroll. If you want to know more about my mentor, Steve Andreas, definitely check out this next video.